Now we're moving up to some equations that are a little bit more difficult. We're going to be solving multi-step equations. So our learning target is I can solve multi-step equations. So remember this, ultimate goal of any equation. Yes, I want you to write this again because this has got to be absolutely drilled into your memory. The ultimate goal of any equation, the baby equations we did yesterday and the more advanced ones that we're working toward, is to isolate that variable, get it on one side of the equal sign by itself. How do we do that? You undo what's happening to the variable using those inverse operations, add and subtract, multiply, and divide. And you feel free to abbreviate, put a plus sign for addition, minus sign for subtraction, and multiplication, division sign, and you can abbreviate a little bit there. So how is this new? Our goal is still to isolate the variable, okay? So you have that already written down. How is it different? Okay, so, well, we'll just get rid of that thing. How about that? Okay. Our how is still the same. We are going to undo what's happening to the variable using the inverse operations. That's still the same. The difference is we're going to add in a step here, hence it being called a multi-step. So inserting that in right there. So what you can do is write this part here and draw an arrow to what you've already drawn and show him this is going to skip line and we're going to do this first. Before you start your undoing, you need to clean up the equation. This saves you steps. So you're going to simplify each side of the equal sign. Look to the left of it, look to the right of it. Are there things that I can do to clean it up? Such as using distributive property. When you see a number right up against the parentheses, your automatic reaction should be to distribute that number. Also, after that, you may need to combine like terms. If you see terms where it's separated with an addition and a subtraction sign, that are the same variable to the same power, go ahead and combine those. And remember, you combine those by adding their coefficients. Okay, remember your steps. When you're solving a multi-step equation, you have to clean things up before you start undoing. So let's take a look at practice A. Negative 23 equals negative 2a minus 10 plus a. What you should notice is that your variable is in two different spots. It's the same variable, but it's, it's spread out. We need to reunite the variables. So I'm going to box negative 2a and positive a because they are like terms. Remember, we connect the sign that's in front of it. So to combine like terms, you add their coefficients. So negative 2 plus positive 1 is negative 1. So I'm going to copy down the rest of it. Negative 23 equals, there we go, negative a. I'm going to cross those out because I've used them, minus 10. And now it is a much simpler equation. I'm going to undo the subtraction first, so I do that by adding 10 to both sides. Negative 23 plus 10 is negative 13 equals negative a. Negative 10 plus positive 10 are additive inverses, so they cancel. Now I'm not done. The variable is not isolated because it's the negative variable. So what I'm doing is I'm dividing both sides by negative 1. And what that does is it essentially just changes the sign of each side. So a equals 13. I'm going to change to a blue marker. Maybe you can see that better. Okay. So for practice B, a little bit more complicated. We have 2r minus 5 minus r equals 13 plus 2r. So I need to reunite my variables here. I do see a parenthesis. There's a negative sign in front of that. So that tells me I need to distribute that negative sign to each of those. So we're going to copy down the rest of it and then we're going to distribute that. So we have 2r negative 5 because it's like negative 1 times 5. Negative times negative r is going to be positive r equals 13 plus 2r. So I have 2r minus 5 plus r. That should be under variables on both sides. Okay, here's practice B. N plus 5 times the quantity n minus 1 equals 7. You should recognize that since I have parentheses there and number right up against it, I'm going to distribute that 5 to each of those. So bring down the first n, plus 5 times n is 5n. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5 equals 7. Now I am ready to reunite my variables. I'm going to combine those like terms. So I have n and positive 5n, which gives me 6n minus 5 equals 7. Now it is a two-step equation. I'm going to undo adding and subtracting first, which is going to be this subtraction. I undo that by adding 5 to both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side. That cancels there. 6n equals 12. And you can probably solve it by just looking at it from here. You know the answer is 2, but you know that because in your head you divided by 6, giving you n equals 2. Whoa! Okay, there we go. Practice C. Now, it looks crazy. If you're like me, fractions stress you out a little bit. So I want to get rid of those fractions. And the trick that you should have got from the lecture there was that you can multiply each of these by the least common denominator. So if I look at those, 4, 5, and 20, the least common denominator is 20. So I can multiply both sides by 20. And what this is going to do is it's going to get rid of all those fractions. Now 20 times 1/4 is the same thing as 20 divided by 4, which is 5. Now here, think of it this way. 20 times 4 is 80. 80 divided by 5 is 16. Or you could have thought about that as like cross simplifying and had a 4 on top. It is 16x equals, and 11 over 20 times 20, think of that as multiplying fractions, you have 11 left on top. So this is much easier to solve. 5 plus 16x equals 11. I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides. That cancels. I have 16x equals 11 minus 5, which is 6. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 16 to undo that multiplying. Now I'm going to leave my solution in terms of a fraction, but I'm going to simplify it. The reason I'm choosing to leave it as a fraction is because my whole equation is based on fractions. And now that we're into algebra, you want to keep that fraction because it will lead into the slope of the graph, which we will get to in lessons to come, in chapters to come about linear equations. So just simplify 6 over 16, which can simplify to 3 over 8.